While millions of people are screaming at their TVs, painting their faces, and emotionally destroyed because 11 strangers lost a game, there's a massive group of people who just don't care. And according to neuroscience, their brains might actually be wired differently. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see the sports-obsessed people in your life. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Not caring about sports doesn't make you boring. It doesn't mean you lack passion, and it definitely doesn't mean something's wrong with you. But there is something fascinating happening in your brain that's completely different from the 60% of Americans who follow sports religiously. Let's start with the obvious question. Why do so many people care so much? Humans are tribal creatures. For thousands of years, being part of a group meant survival. Your tribe protected you from predators, helped you hunt, kept you alive. And sports, they're basically modern tribes with better merchandise. When someone watches their team, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical that makes you love your family. Wild, right? Their brain literally tricks them into thinking these millionaire athletes are part of their clan. But here's where it gets interesting. People who don't obsess over sports often have what psychologists call lower tribal instincts. Their identity isn't as strongly tied to being part of a group. They're more individualistic. They're more likely to say, I don't need to belong to something bigger to feel complete. And there's actual research on this. A 2019 study found that people with low sports interest showed way less us versus them thinking. Translation, they don't automatically hate the other team just because they're not on their side. But wait, it gets weirder. Because what happens in the brain of a sports fanatic during a game is legitimately concerning. You know that feeling when you're about to open a present, that anticipation? That's dopamine firing in your brain. Sports fans get that same hit during games. Every play, every possession, constant microdoses of anticipation and reward. It's literally addictive. Studies using fMRI scans show that watching your team activates the same reward centers as gambling and other highly compelling activities. And here's the kicker, the uncertainty is what makes it so powerful. You don't know if your team will win. That unpredictability keeps the dopamine flowing. It's intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward schedule known to psychology, the same principle that makes slot machines so effective. The mechanism is eerily similar to other forms of behavioral addiction. Your brain doesn't distinguish much between different sources of dopamine, it just knows it wants more. People who don't care about sports, their dopamine systems simply aren't triggered by vicarious competition, and this might be genetic. Research from the University of Chicago suggests that variations in dopamine receptor genes can predict how much someone cares about competitive spectator activities. Think about that. Your complete indifference to whether the Lakers win or lose might literally be in your DNA. But there's another layer. Sports fans experience something called burgeoning, basking in reflected glory. When their team wins, they say, we won. When their team loses, they lost. Notice the pronoun switch. People who don't obsess over sports are less likely to engage in this psychological distancing. They're more consistent in their self-concept. They don't need external victories to feel successful. Their self-esteem is more stable, less dependent on things completely outside their control. Now, before the comment section explodes, I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but I am saying there are legitimate psychological differences, and understanding them is fascinating. Here's something that sounds contradictory. Sports fans often score higher on certain empathy measures. They practice caring deeply about other people's struggles, even if those people are strangers wearing their team's jersey. So why don't non-sports people feel that same empathy for athletes? It's about empathy allocation. Everyone has a limited capacity for caring deeply about things. Sports non-fans often direct that empathy toward different places: social causes, personal relationships, creative projects, intellectual challenges. A 2021 study found that people with low sports interest scored way higher in openness to experience and love of art and beauty. They're getting their emotional highs from art, music, nature, ideas. Their brains are seeking the same reward, meaning, connection, transcendence. They're just finding it somewhere else. And let's be honest about something else. For some people, not caring about sports is actually a defense mechanism. Maybe they were bullied in gym class. Maybe they felt excluded by sports culture. Maybe they're pushing back against the aggressive competitiveness often tied to sports fandom. Maybe they just never understood why grown adults scream at televisions over a ball. Your indifference might have a backstory, or maybe you just find it boring. Both are valid. But here's the part that explains so much about why sports fans and non-sports fans sometimes can't understand each other. It comes down to how you experience meaning. Sports fans find meaning in narrative, the underdog story, the comeback, the dynasty, the rivalry. It's compelling because it's unpredictable, real-life drama with genuine stakes. People who don't care about sports often find that randomness meaningless. They think, why would I emotionally invest in an outcome I can't control, performed by people I don't know, in a game that doesn't affect my actual life? They're not wrong, but neither are sports fans. It's just two different approaches to the human need for story and meaning. One group finds epic narrative in a championship run, the other finds it in a novel, a relationship, a creative project, a scientific discovery. Here's what researchers call parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans build one-sided relationships with teams and players. Non-sports people prefer investing emotional energy where there's actual reciprocity, where their care matters to the outcome, where they're participants, not spectators. Neither is superior, they're just different strategies for navigating the human experience. Psychologist Mihaly, who studied optimal experience, found that flow states, those moments of complete absorption, can be achieved through countless activities. For some, it's watching sports. For others, it's literally anything else. And here's what's really interesting. People who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more present in their own lives. They're not spending 3 hours every Sunday experiencing someone else's struggle. They're engaged in their own. There's something quietly radical about that. So what does all this mean? If you don't care about sports, you're not missing out on some fundamental human experience. You're just different. Your brain's reward system, your tribal instincts, your empathy allocation, they're all calibrated differently, and that's perfectly okay. The next time someone asks, "Did you see the game?" and you genuinely could not care less, remember, you're not broken, you're not boring, you're just playing a different game. One that might, just maybe, have higher stakes. If this resonated with you, you're probably going to love why quiet people are actually processing information completely differently than everyone else, and why that might be your biggest advantage. Click one of these videos to find out why you think a little differently than the crowd.